Inalla Archmage Ritualist. Now there's been a lot of demand and question from my subscribers to see an Inalla deck tech video because they believe she has a lot of potential, and they are right. However, I have postponed this tech video for some time because I've always been waiting for new wizards to see print that would potentially upgrade her build. When she originally came, we didn't play that many wizards in this deck to begin with. There were a few wizards that functioned really good, but in the end, Wizard Tribal isn't really a thing yet. And the reason why I decided to make a deck tech video about her now is because War of the Spark just got released, and I think, well, let's do it anyway, even though we didn't see that much upgrade from War of the Spark for her. But I do definitely believe that in the future, Wizards of the Coast will be printing more wizards that will upgrade Inalla deck. That will actually maybe make something of a Wizard Tribal, or something that you could call Wizard Tribal. I really want to emphasize that you shouldn't go for all the wizards you can find and create a Wizard Tribal. Pick and choose the wizards that are good, cEDH viable even in other decks, but will be extra strong inside this deck. Now, how does actually Inalla work? She has an ability called Eminence, which I almost think is a bit broken. And whenever a wizard, a non-token wizard enters the battlefield, you may pay 1 generic colorless mana and you will create a token out of that wizard. This token will gain haste and you will exile it in the beginning of your end step. Inalla functions pretty much the same as Naban, a 2 mana cost wizard 2/1. If a wizard entering the battlefield under your control casts a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Inalla is doing the exact same thing, but being a much better commander. Inalla is 3 colors, you gain black and red included, while Naban is only mono blue. So I definitely think that Inalla is a lot better. She's doing the exact same thing. It costs 1 more mana, because you cast your creature, your wizard, with an enter the battlefield effect, then you pay 1 more mana to get a secondary trigger of that effect by creating a secondary token of that creature. Now, if you would include Naban inside your Inalla deck, you would be doing something called win more. I don't think that you should include Naban at all, because you don't really need that much value. In the end, we're not playing that heavy amount of wizard. I don't think you should play that many wizards with ETB effects, so he would function with too few cards to begin with. So I would rather have a counterspell than this 2 mana cost 2/1 wizard. So why is Inalla competitive to begin with? When she was printed, Wonderwine Prophets actually already existed, and the deck just automatically created itself. Now this is a merfolk wizard, and in the beginning this was the only wizard we actually played, but now we're playing a little bit more. Now, champion a merfolk. When this comes into play, sacrifice it unless you remove another merfolk you control from the game. When this leaves play, that card returns to play. Without the champion, this combo wouldn't work. Second text. Whenever Wonderwine Prophet deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice a merfolk. If you do, take an extra turn after this one. So how does this ability actually function with Inalla's Eminence ability? When you put this wizard, this merfolk wizard into play, you will have 2 triggers. First the champion a merfolk trigger, and then the Eminence Inalla's trigger. Now you are the active player, so you are allowed to put the stack in any order that you want. Make sure that you put Inalla's trigger above so that it happens before the champion merfolk trigger, because if you make the opposite, this creature will actually just die, unless you have a merfolk in play. In any case, now what is going to happen is that the token will enter and you will now have a secondary champion a merfolk, and the token will champion the original. That means that the original's champion a merfolk will fizzle and this Wonderwine Prophet will survive. Now the token has haste, go to combat, attack and into a player that doesn't have a blocker. If an opponent has a blocker, you can't actually go for this combo because you need to hit face. Then we go to the second ability where you sacrifice a merfolk to gain an extra turn. Alright, that's cool. Now when we sacrifice the token, the original will re-enter. That means that we have everything going again. 2 triggers, the champion and merfolk trigger and the Eminence trigger. Now we have to pay 1 more mana for the Eminence. We've currently spent 8 mana, so the token will now champion the original again. Then we go to our end step. In our end step, the Eminence ability says that the token will be exiled. That means that the original will enter again. 2 triggers again, we do the exact same all over a third time. We pay 1 more mana, currently we've spent 9 mana. And the token will now champion the original. Now we can't go to the beginning of our end step twice. That means that we're gonna keep the token championing the original when we get to our next turn. So we go to our next turn, the token is still championing, holding the original in play, in check, but this token is going to be exiled in the beginning of this next turn's cycle. Doesn't matter from here, because from here we have pretty much infinite turns, as long as opponents doesn't have blocker. Then again, we could simply just attack into an opponent, draw cards, so we get removal to kill our opponent's other blockers. So that means that from here we have a really janky combo. This is like 9 mana. 9 mana is a lot, and a 1-card combo 9 mana isn't actually that good. And this combo could fizzle if all of our opponents simply has blockers. If one opponent has no blockers, and the other opponent has blockers, you can actually get past all of them if you draw into something like Cyclonic Rift, because you're gonna be gaining extra turns, you're gonna be drawing cards, putting lands into play, etc, etc. But in the end, this combo is a bit janky, and this is making Inalla something of a semi-competitive. A 1-card combo is good, but 9 mana is a lot. Don't worry though, we actually have another way of assembling this combo. Here we have Spellseeker from Battle Bond, and Spellseeker was a huge upgrade for this deck. And this is really showcasing the potential of how easy this deck could see upgrades in the future. Spellseeker just made it more possible here. Spellseeker is a 1-card tutor that will assemble the entire combo. So here's the trick. Spellseeker is a wizard. You cast Spellseeker for 3 mana, Eminence trigger, pay 1 more mana, currently spent 4 mana. So you get a secondary Spellseeker ETB effect, just like how Naban worked. That means that we are gonna be tutoring twice. The 2 cards that we're gonna find is Reanimate and Entomb, and I think you can see the trick what we're gonna do here. So we pass turn, in an opponent's end step we cast Entomb, and we put 1 Divine Prophet inside a graveyard. Then we proceed to our turn in our first main phase. For only 1 black mana we cast Reanimate, targeting 1 Divine Prophet. We will lose 6 life because 1 Divine Prophet costs 6 mana. Then we had to perform the Eminence trigger 3 times. That means the total mana that we're gonna spend is 4. The big problem with this pathway, however, is that where our opponents are gonna know exactly what's coming. You cast the Spellseeker during your previous turn, you pass turn, and you will reveal the 2 cards that you find, and if your opponents know a little bit about Inalla, they will know exactly what's coming, and they can prepare for it because they know that you're gonna be attempting to win during your turn. However, spending 4 mana is alright. That means that all the other mana that we have, we could use that mana for counterspells and interaction. Also, the mana that we are spending this turn is 1 black and then 3 colorless generic. That means that we have all the other blue mana still available for counterspells. But this so-called wizard actually has more combos to go for. Here we have Dualcaster Mage and the Ghostly Flickers, and with Inalla's Eminence ability you can create infinite Dualcaster Mage tokens with haste, attack and win, and this is how it's going to be performed. Begin with casting Ghostly Flickers for 3 mana. Doesn't matter what you target because the original will actually never resolve. Then keep priority, cast Dualcaster Mage for 3 more mana. Total mana spent is 6, and we're never gonna need more mana to spend to perform this combo. That means that all the other mana you have can be used for counterspells and protecting this combo. Now the ETB effect from the Dualcaster Mage will target the original Ghostly Flicker. You don't need to create an Eminence trigger, you don't need to create a token out of the Dualcaster Mage currently. Now the copy of the Ghostly Flicker will resolve, target the original Dualcaster Mage and 1 land. it has to be a land that doesn't tap for damage. For example, Seat of Brass would kill you, but if you target a basic land or maybe a command tower, you're fine. After this, you will now resolve the copy of the Ghostly Flicker. The Dualcaster Mage will flicker, come back into play again, and the land will also flicker, go out of the game tapped and come into play again untapped. That means that you have an Inalla trigger. You can now tap the land that you flickered to create a token out of the Dualcaster Mage. Now the original Dualcaster Mage and the token of the Dualcaster Mage will actually target Ghostly Flicker again, so you will flicker the original Dualcaster Mage and the same land again. So now you will flicker the Dualcaster Mage and this land infinitely, and each time you do so, you will create a token. You need to end it somehow later, and then the original Ghostly Flicker will also resolve, but then you have infinite tokens with haste, attack and win. Oh, by the way, Spellseeker could actually tutor for Ghostly Flicker, or well, first Spellseeker will find Merchant Scroll, and then you cast Merchant Scroll and find Ghostly Flicker. While we are still at the topic of tutors, Spellseeker was plan A. Use Spellseeker to assemble the entire Reanimator combo where you gain infinite turns. And here's a good card that could actually help us out tutoring for Spellseeker. Vidalcan Aether Mage. It has Wizard Cycle. For 3 mana you can discard this card in instant speed during an opponent's turn to search your deck for any wizard and put that card into your hand. That is great. This is a great toolbox tutor for this semi-wizard tribal deck that could actually grow in the wizard count and become an actual wizard tribal cEDH deck in the future. Who knows? Wizards need to print more wizards. Now, if Wizard of the Coast were to print more wizards that were actually cEDH viable, we could increase the wizard count inside this deck and actually make this into a cEDH wizard tribal deck. Now, what would that be interesting? Let's actually read Inalla's secondary text. Tap 5 untapped wizards you control. Target player lose 7 life. We could actually use Inalla's secondary ability to burn your opponents out of the game. Why would that actually be interesting? Well, if there is a lot of hate bear wizards with interactions that you could use against your opponents, that you could just have hanging around on the battlefield, you can later, if plan A, plan B failed, you could cast your Inalla as a plan C and start tapping your wizard to burn your opponents out of the game. Alright, let's actually take a look at an actual hate bear wizard. Here we have Fate Spinner, 2 blue mana and 1 generic, 1/2 human wizard. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, that player chooses draw step, main phase or combat phase. The player skips each instances of the chosen steps and phases this turn. This is an hate bear wizard that is gonna affect Tymna and Nayela. However, I don't think that this wizard is actually good enough, and I'm not going to include Fate Spinner inside my Inalla deck, because the card is a bit too narrow, and also Tymna and Nayela aren't really affected by this card that much. They could simply just ignore the main phase, go to combat, produce tokens or draw cards in the Tymna's case, and then simply just cast spells during an opponent's turn. Instant speed interaction, instant beat tutors, etc, etc. It would interact with Nayela a bit, because Nayela wanna cast, let's say, a card that will give her infinite combat steps and then go to combat, and Fate Spinner would actually interrupt that. But in the end, I think the card is a bit too narrow. But if you're running up against a lot of Nayelas or other decks that are actually going to combat, for example, producing infinite tokens and then attacking with those infinite tokens, Fate Spinner might be good. Now, believe it or not, but there are actually wizards, blue wizards, that you could consider mana dogs. Or well, they're not really mana dogs, they don't really tap for mana. They tap to untap other stuff. For example, a Fetto Alchemist that will untap a creature or an artifact, and if that artifact is able to tap for mana, then a Fetto Alchemist is something of a mana dog. Fate Stitcher the same, 4 mana to untap anything, for example a land. Now, the big problem with these cards is that they actually cost a lot of mana. Birds of Paradise costs 1 green mana, and that is great. However, we still actually play Bloom Tender. Bloom Tender costs 2 mana and will generate a lot of mana. while a Feto Alchemist will cost 2 mana, and if you untap, let's say, Mana Vault or Soldering, Grim Monolith, Basalt Monolith, then it generates 3 mana. So I think it's in the spectrum of actually being okay, kinda fine. Vidillion Click is a 3 mana flying flash, 3/1 fairy wizard, and for 4 mana you get a secondary effect of this ETB trigger. When Vidillion Click enters the battlefield, look at target player's hand. You may choose a non-land card from it. If you do, that player reveals the chosen card, puts it into the bottom of his or her library, then draws a card. This is something of an interaction. For example, if an opponent casts Isochron Scepter or Flash, we know what they are gonna have inside their hand. In response, cast Vidillion Click. Take a look at their hand, remove Hulk from their hand, and then draw a new card, and then you pretty much make the Flash fizzle. The same thing with Isochron Scepter, or well, you will remove Dramatic Reversal, and then the Isochron Scepter will fizzle. So there's a bunch of stuff that Vidillion Click couldn't interact with. But you could also use Vidillion Click to target yourself, and then just loot away cards that aren't really good. Reveal something that you don't need to draw a new card. In the end, I don't really think that Vidillion Click is actually that good. It's a 3/1 flyer, so it's a beater. It would synergize with a burn strategy later, because you could simply attack with this 3/1 flying to deal damage, and then later use it to tap to burn 7 life for your opponent. And if you have 6 wizards in play, you could just keep on attacking with Vidillion Click and then kill your opponents really slow that way. So in the end, I don't actually think that Vidillion Click is actually that good, but it's something to consider. Here is another hate bear wizard, Jailer. Cards in graveyards lose all abilities. This is too narrow. It's gonna interrupt, for example, Dread Return and maybe Life from the Loam and some other fringe stuff. In the end, this is something you could consider if you're going up against a lot of Hermit Druids that use Dread Return. But I don't think this card is good at all. I'm not including it inside my deck. Now, in the beginning of this video, I did mention that War of the Spark didn't really give Inalla that much of an upgrade, but this Dreadhorde Arcanist is actually a tiny bit of an upgrade for Inalla. With her Eminence ability, you would cast this Slapcaster Mage for 2 mana, then pay 1 more mana for the Eminence trigger to create a token out of it, and that token can attack immediately with haste to gain the attack trigger the same turn you actually cast this creature. Now, if we have more versions of a Feto Alchemist and more creatures wizard inside the deck, we can perform this combo, and I really like this combo. It's a bit grindy combo. So tap a Feto Alchemist for mana, then tap Arcane Artisan and activates its ability. Target player draws a card, we will target ourselves. Then exiles a card from their hand. We will exile a wizard creature. If it's a creature exiled this way, that player creates a token that's a copy of that card. That means that we will draw a card and put a wizard into play. Then we have Intruder Alarm, an enchantment. Creatures don't untap during your controller's untap phase. Whenever any creature comes into play, untap all creatures. That means that when you activate Arcane Artisan's ability, draws a card and exile a creature card, a wizard creature, you will put a token into play, trigger the Intruder Alarm to untap both a Feto Mage and Arcane Artisan. And as you are continuously slamming wizard creature tokens into play with this Arcane Artisan, Intruder Alarm will keep triggering and untap all your wizards. That means that later, when you have enough mana, cast Inalla and start tapping those wizards to burn your opponents. Then activate Arcane Artisan once more, draw a card, and slam a wizard into play, untap everything, and keep burning continuously until all of your opponents are dead. Oh yeah, one more thing, really important. The Eminence ability don't trigger on tokens. That means that the wizards that Arcane Artisans slams into play as tokens are not gonna trigger the Eminence, so you can't actually use Inalla and Arcane Artisan together in that form of way. If they could, then it would explode. There's actually another version of this combo, a 2-card combo that you could go for, with Cloudstone Courier and Paradox Engine, and then whatever random wizard. We actually don't care about what this wizard does. All that we care about is that it actually is a wizard. Begin with casting this creature for 2 mana using your rocks. Then Inalla will trigger the Eminence, and for 1 more mana, 3 mana total, you will create a token out of this wizard. Now, let's read Cloudstone Courier. Whenever a non-artifact permanent enters the battlefield under your control, you may return another permanent you control that shares a permanent type with it to its owner's hand. This will actually trigger on tokens. So when the token of this creature comes into play, Cloudstone Courier will trigger and return the original. Now, what Paradox Engine reads is that whenever you cast a spell, untap all non-land permanents you control. So you will untap your rocks. Now cast this creature again. This will untap all the rocks, and you will have all the triggers from the Cloudstone Courier and Inalla's Eminence. This will now create infinite wizard tokens with haste. Attack and win. And why I actually like this combo inside Inalla is because you could utilize Cloudstone Courier as a grindy card draw effect. Cast a wizard with an ETB effect that you like, create a token out of it, and use the token with Cloudstone Courier to return the original that you could cast later. So you could sit there and loop your creatures over and over and grind and card draw produce that way. You could also utilize Paradox Engine as a 1-card card inside Inalla. If you have a bunch of Hate Bear Wizard, which don't actually exist yet, and if you have a bunch of Interactive Wizard that kinda exist, but we need more, then you could have your Inalla in play as well, tap all your wizard, burn for 7 life, cast a wizard, or cast anything, a rock, untap all your wizard, and you can do it once more, increasing the burn potential. But if you draw the 2 cards, you actually gain an infinite combo and win. In the end, there's a lot of things you could say about this Dark Lady. I really think she's cool, and I really like her. I definitely think she has a lot of potential, and she could definitely be built in a lot of different ways. However, most of the cards that I've been showcasing in this video to prove Inalla's potential aren't really good enough. The cards that Inalla are looking for don't really exist yet. However, from every set there's usually maybe 1 wizard that could improve and help Inalla grow in power. So I definitely think that this is a card, a commander that could become something in the future. Currently I view Inalla as something of a semi-competitive commander, but she could definitely grow and become something of a tier 1 cEDH viable commander. And I hope you enjoy the theory crafting of how this commander could be built and certain combos that you could actually go for. And if you want to take a look on how I have built this commander, in the description below of this video there's a link to a tapped out page that I have put together. And that page would probably see a lot of upgrades when new wizards see print that would improve that deck. And maybe the deck could change drastically depending on what sort of wizards would enter. And if the deck would change drastically too much, I might as well do another tapped out list for that future deck, because I think that Inalla could definitely be built in a lot different way in the future. Currently I have built a Reanimator Inalla that's trying to reanimate the merfolk wizard. And that's it for this wizard magical video. Thank you so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions of any sort, leave those in the comments below and I will try and answer those questions. Take care guys!